The blood on Zelda Zimmerman's lip had dried by the time she stumbled into the saloon at midnight. Her dress torn at the shoulder and her eyes hollow as abandoned mine shafts. The piano player stopped mid-tune when she pushed through the doors, and every man in that smoke-filled room turned to stare at the woman who had become Guthrie's most talked-about shame over the past 3 years, since she arrived in Oklahoma Territory in the spring of 1892. She walked straight to the bar, her boots clicking against the wooden floor, each step deliberate despite the trembling in her hands. The bartender, a man named Samuel who had known her in better days, poured her a whiskey without being asked. Zelda took it and drained it in one swallow, feeling the burn slide down her throat like liquid courage she desperately needed. "You all right, miss?" Samuel's voice was low, concerned in a way that made her want to weep. "I have never been all right," she said, her voice rough as sandpaper. "Not since I was 17 years old." The doors swung open again behind her, bringing with them the cool October night air and a man she had never seen before. He was tall, broad-shouldered, with dark hair that curled slightly at his collar and eyes the color of storm clouds gathering over the prairie. He wore his gun low on his hip like a man who knew how to use it, and there was dust on his boots from long travel. Isaac Anderson had been riding for 3 weeks straight from Montana, chasing rumors of work on the cattle ranches that sprawled across Oklahoma Territory. He had not expected to walk into a saloon and find a woman standing at the bar with blood on her face and defiance in her eyes that spoke of battles fought and lost too many times to count. Their eyes met across the room, and something passed between them in that moment that neither could name. It was not love, not yet, but recognition perhaps, the way two wounded animals might acknowledge each other in the wilderness. "You need a doctor," Isaac said, walking toward her with the easy confidence of a man comfortable in his own skin. "I need to be left alone," Zelda replied, but there was no heat in her words, only exhaustion that went bone deep. Isaac stopped a few feet away, studying her with those gray eyes that seemed to see too much. "Whoever did that to you still out there? Does it matter?" She laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "There will always be another one. That is what happens when you are a woman like me." "What kind of woman is that?" She turned to face him fully then, and he could see that beneath the blood and bruises. She was beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with her features and everything to do with the fierce intelligence burning in her green eyes. The kind men use and throw away. The kind they pay for when they want something warm in their bed but would not speak to in the daylight. "I have been used by many men before, Cowboy. What makes you any different?" The saloon had gone quiet again, everyone listening to this exchange between the stranger and the woman who worked the rooms above the saloon 6 nights a week. Isaac could feel their eyes on him, waiting to see if he would laugh or walk away or say something cruel like so many men before him. Instead, he took another step closer and said, "Then let me be the one who cherishes you." The words hung in the air between them, simple and profound. Zelda stared at him as if he had spoken in a foreign tongue, her expression flickering between disbelief and something that might have been hope if she had not learned long ago that hope was a dangerous thing for women like her. "You do not even know me," she whispered. "No," Isaac agreed. "But I would like to. And I think you deserve to be known, not just used." She wanted to tell him he was a fool, that she was beyond saving, beyond cherishing, beyond anything good or decent. But there was something in his eyes that stopped her, a sincerity she had not seen in so long she had forgotten what it looked like. "Buy me another drink," she said finally, "and I will tell you why that is the most foolish thing anyone has ever said to me." They sat at a corner table while the saloon slowly came back to life around them, and Zelda told him her story in a voice that grew steadier as the whiskey loosened her tongue. She had been born in Missouri to a mother who died when she was young and a father who drank away his grief until there was nothing left but empty bottles and broken promises. When she was 17, she had run away with a man who promised her the world and delivered only pain and degradation. "He brought me to Kansas City," she said, staring into her glass. "Set me up in a house with 6 other girls. Told me I owed him for the train fare, for the food, for the roof over my head. The debt never seemed to get any smaller no matter how many men I entertained." Isaac listened without interrupting, his jaw tight but his eyes never leaving her face. She told him about the next man, and the one after that, each one promising to take care of her, each one taking more than they gave until she was hollow inside. She had ended up in Guthrie 3 years ago, following a gambler who lost her in a card game to the man who owned this saloon. "So you see," she concluded, "I am not the kind of woman men cherish. I am the kind they use until something better comes along." "Those were not men," Isaac said quietly. "Those were cowards who took advantage of someone who had no other choice. But you have a choice now." "Do I?" She met his eyes, and there was a challenge in her gaze. "What exactly are you offering me, cowboy? Another empty promise? A week of kindness before you move on to the next town?" "I am offering you a chance," he said. "I cannot promise you much. I've got $200 saved in prospects for ranch work outside of town. But I can promise you that I will never treat you as anything less than you deserve. I can promise you respect and kindness and time to figure out who you are when you are not surviving." Zelda laughed, but this time there was less bitterness in it. "You are insane." "You know that, probably," Isaac admitted with a small smile, "but I have been called worse." She studied him for a long moment, this stranger who had walked into her life and turned it upside down with a handful of words. Everything in her experience told her to run, to protect herself, to not believe in kindness because it always came with a price. But there was something different about Isaac Anderson, something in the way he looked at her that made her want to take the risk. "I work for a man named Garrett," she said slowly. "He thinks he owns me. If I just leave, he will come after me." "Then we will deal with Garrett," Isaac said. "Together." That word "together" resonated in her chest like a bell being struck. When had she last had anyone on her side? When had she last been part of a we instead of standing alone? "Why?" she asked, needing to understand. "Why would you do this for me?" Isaac was quiet for a moment, considering his answer carefully. "My mother was a woman like you," he said finally. "Not exactly the same circumstances, but close enough. My father found her working in a dance hall in Texas, and everyone told him he was a fool for marrying her. But he loved her anyway, and she turned out to be the best woman I ever knew. She died 5 years ago, and before she passed, she made me promise that if I ever met a woman who needed help the way she once did, I would not turn away. So here I am, trying to keep that promise." Tears pricked at Zelda's eyes, but she blinked them back fiercely. She had not cried in 3 years, and she was not about to start now. "Your father was a rare man." "He was," Isaac agreed. "And he taught me that every person deserves dignity, no matter where they have been or what they have done." "You deserve that too, Zelda." Hearing her name on his lips, spoken with such gentleness, nearly broke something inside her. She had been called many things by many men, but rarely by her actual name, and never with such care. "I need to go upstairs and gather my things," she said, making her decision. "And then we need to leave before Garrett realizes what is happening." Isaac nodded. "I will wait here. Take what you need and we will ride out tonight." She stood, swaying slightly, and he rose with her, steadying her with a hand on her elbow. The touch was impersonal, supportive, nothing more, and that simple respect meant more to her than all the pretty words ever could. "If you are not here when I come back down," she said, testing him one last time. "I will understand." "I will be here," Isaac promised. "I do not make promises I cannot keep." Zelda climbed the narrow stairs to the cramped room she had called home for 3 years, her heart pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She owned very little, just a few dresses, a hairbrush that had belonged to her mother, and a small wooden box containing the only letter her father had ever written her, delivered after his death by a neighbor. She packed it all into a worn carpet bag, moving quickly but carefully, listening for any sound of Garrett's heavy footsteps on the stairs. She had just finished when the door burst open, and there he was, all 6 feet of mean-spirited greed wrapped in an expensive suit. Garrett owned 3 saloons in Guthrie, a general store, and had his fingers in more questionable enterprises than anyone could count. He was not a man who liked losing his possessions, and he considered Zelda very much his possession, going somewhere. His voice was deceptively mild, but Zelda knew better than to trust that tone. "I am leaving," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "I have paid you back every cent I owed you twice over. I am done. You are done when I say you are done." He moved closer, and she could smell the whiskey on his breath, see the red flush of anger creeping up his neck. "You think you can just walk out of here? You think I do not know about that cowboy downstairs? He has nothing to do with you. Everything in this saloon has to do with me." Garrett grabbed her arm, his fingers digging in hard enough to leave bruises. "You are going to march downstairs, send him on his way, and get back to work. And maybe, if you are very sweet about it, I will not beat you bloody for this little rebellion." Zelda opened her mouth to argue, but before she could speak, there were footsteps on the stairs, and then Isaac filled the doorway, his presence somehow making the small room feel even smaller. "Let her go," he said quietly, and there was steel beneath those words. Garrett turned, still holding Zelda's arm. "This is none of your business, Cowboy. The lady works for me. She does not anymore. You have no idea who you are dealing with." Garrett's hand moved toward his jacket where Zelda knew he kept a derringer, but Isaac was faster, his Colt clearing leather in a smooth motion that spoke of years of practice. "I know exactly who I am dealing with," Isaac said, his gun steady and pointed directly at Garrett's chest. "I am dealing with a man who thinks he can own another human being. I am dealing with a man who beats women and calls it business. I am dealing with a man who has about 5 seconds to let go of her arm before I put a bullet through his expensive suit." For a long moment, the 3 of them stood frozen in a tableau of tension and threat. Then Garrett released Zelda's arm and stepped back, his face mottled with rage but his survival instincts clearly warring with his pride. "You will regret this," he hissed. "Both of you. I have friends in this town, powerful friends. You will not make it 10 miles before they hunt you down." "Then I guess we better ride fast," Isaac said. He gestured with his gun toward the door. "After you. Nice and slow." They backed out of the room with Isaac keeping his weapon trained on Garrett the whole time. The saloon had emptied out, word of the confrontation spreading fast, and Samuel the bartender was nowhere to be seen. Smart man, Zelda thought. No point in getting involved in other people's troubles. Isaac's horse, a sturdy bay gelding, was tied outside along with a gray mare that he must have bought or borrowed. He helped Zelda mount the mare, then swung up onto his own horse, all while keeping one eye on the saloon doors. "Ride," he said simply, and they kicked their horses into a gallop, racing down the darkened main street of Guthrie and out into the vast Oklahoma night. They rode hard for hours, putting as much distance as possible between themselves and whatever revenge Garrett might be planning. The landscape rolled past them in shades of black and silver under the half-moon, the prairie grass whispering secrets to the wind. Zelda clung to the mare's mane, her carpetbag bouncing against her leg, and felt something unfamiliar bubbling up in her chest. It took her a moment to recognize it as laughter, wild and free and tinged with hysteria. Isaac glanced over at her, concerned, but then he started laughing too, and they rode through the darkness like two mad people escaping from an asylum, drunk on freedom and adrenaline and the sheer improbability of what they had just done. They finally stopped as dawn was breaking over the horizon, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold. Isaac led them to a small creek lined with cottonwood trees, a place that offered water for the horses and some cover from any pursuers. They dismounted, both of them stiff and sore from the hard ride, and stood for a moment in awkward silence. "Thank you," Zelda said finally. "You did not have to do that. You could have just walked away." "I told you I would not," Isaac reminded her. He began unsaddling his horse, his movements efficient and practiced. "We should rest here for a few hours, let the horses recover. Then we will head west toward the ranches. I have a contact who might be able to help us both find work." "Work," Zelda repeated, testing the word. "Honest work." "That is the idea." He glanced at her, his expression softening. "It will not be easy. People talk and reputations have a way of following folks, but we will figure it out." She helped him with the horses, unsaddling the mare and leading her to the creek to drink. The water was cold and clear, and Zelda knelt beside it, cupping her hands to splash her face, washing away the dried blood and the last remnants of her old life. When she looked up, Isaac was watching her with an expression she could not quite read. "What?" she asked. "Nothing," he said quickly. "Just thinking that you are braver than you give yourself credit for." "I am terrified," she admitted. "I have no idea what I am doing or where I am going. All I know is that I could not stay there another day." "Being terrified and doing something anyway," Isaac said. "That is the definition of bravery in my book." They made a small fire and brewed coffee in Isaac's battered tin pot, sharing jerky and hardtack that tasted like sawdust but filled the empty places in their stomachs. As they ate, they talked, really talked, the way two people do when they are stripping away the layers of protection they usually wear. Isaac told her about growing up in Texas with parents who loved each other fiercely, despite what society thought of their union. His father had been a rancher, not wealthy but comfortable, and had taught Isaac everything he knew about horses and cattle and treating people fairly. His mother had been the one who taught him to read, to think beyond the narrow confines of their world, to see people for who they were rather than what others said about them. "She had this saying," Isaac said, staring into the fire. "She would tell me that every person carries their own story, and you cannot judge someone until you have walked their path." My father's friends used to make comments sometimes about her past, and she would just smile and say that the past had brought her to where she needed to be. I think she meant my father, their life together. "She sounds remarkable," Zelda said softly. "She was." He looked up at her then, and there was a vulnerability in his eyes that made her breath catch. "I think she would have liked you. You do not know that. You do not really know me." "So tell me," he said. "Help me know you." So she did. She told him about the little girl she had been in Missouri, wild and free until the world taught her that girls were not allowed to be either of those things. She told him about her mother's laugh and her father's slow descent into the bottle. She told him about the dreams she used to have before they were beaten out of her, dreams of seeing the ocean, of learning to paint, of having a small house with flowers in the window boxes. "I have not thought about those things in years," she said, surprised by the confession. "I had forgotten that I ever wanted anything beyond survival." "Maybe it is time to remember," Isaac suggested gently. They rested through the heat of the day, taking turns keeping watch while the other slept. When Zelda finally closed her eyes, she expected nightmares, but instead she dreamed of flowers and oceans and a house she had never seen but somehow recognized as home. They woke in the late afternoon and rode on, moving at a steadier pace now, following the sun westward. Isaac seemed to have an innate sense of direction, guiding them across the trackless prairie with confidence. They talked as they rode, conversations that ranged from the mundane to the profound, and Zelda found herself relaxing in a way she had not thought possible. 2 days later, they arrived at a sprawling ranch called the Triple Bar, owned by a man named Marcus Sullivan, who had served with Isaac's father during the Civil War. The ranch house was a long, low building of white-washed wood with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Cattle dotted the rolling hills in every direction, and the whole place hummed with the energy of hard work and honest purpose. Marcus turned out to be a gruff man in his 60s with a weathered face and sharp blue eyes that missed nothing. He greeted Isaac with genuine warmth, clasping his hand and clapping him on the shoulder. "Isaac Anderson," he boomed. "Been wondering when you would show up. Got your letter saying you were headed this way." His eyes shifted to Zelda, assessing but not unkind. "And who is this?" "This is Zelda Zimmerman," Isaac said, and Zelda noticed that he offered no other explanation or excuse. "She is looking for work, same as me." Marcus studied her for a long moment, and Zelda forced herself to meet his gaze steadily, refusing to look away or show shame. Whatever he saw seemed to satisfy him because he nodded slowly. "Can you cook?" he asked bluntly. "Yes," Zelda said. "And I can clean, mend, tend a garden, and handle basic medical care. I am a hard worker, Mr. Sullivan, and I do not cause trouble." "Good enough for me," Marcus said. "My housekeeper quit last month, ran off to get married, and the boys have been complaining about my cooking ever since. You can have her room in the house and 3 meals a day plus $20 a month." "Fair, more than fair," Zelda said, hardly daring to believe it. $20 a month and a safe place to sleep seemed like riches beyond measure. "Isaac, I can put you on with the regular crew," Marcus continued. "Same deal, plus room in the bunkhouse. We are getting ready for the winter cattle drive down to the railhead, so I can use another experienced hand." "That work for you?" "It does," Isaac agreed. "Thank you, Marcus." "Do not thank me yet. You have not tasted my cooking." Marcus grinned, and Zelda felt some of the tension leave her shoulders. This could work. This might actually work. Marcus showed Zelda to a small but clean room off the kitchen with a real bed, a dresser, and a window that looked out over the ranch yard. It was the nicest space she had occupied in years, and she sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment after Marcus left, just trying to process the sudden change in her circumstances. There was a knock on the door, and Isaac stepped in, his hat in his hands. "You settled all right?" "Yes." She looked around the room again as if to make sure it was real. "I keep thinking I am going to wake up back in that saloon." "You are not," Isaac said firmly. "This is real. This is your fresh start." "Our fresh start," she corrected, and he smiled. "Our fresh start," he agreed. "Listen, I know we did not really talk about what this is between us. I meant what I said about cherishing you, about giving you time and respect. But I do not want to pressure you into anything. We can just be friends if that is what you want." Zelda stood and crossed to where he stood in the doorway. She was not quite ready to touch him, not yet, but she wanted him to see the sincerity in her eyes when she spoke. "I do not know what I want," she said honestly. "I have never been in a situation where what I wanted mattered. But I would like to find out. I would like to have the time to figure out who I am and what I feel without anyone rushing me or demanding things from me. Can you give me that?" "I can give you all the time in the world," Isaac said softly. "And I will be right here when you are ready to figure it out." The next weeks settled into a rhythm that Zelda found both strange and comforting. She rose before dawn to prepare breakfast for Marcus and the ranch hands. Hearty meals of eggs and bacon, biscuits and gravy, coffee strong enough to strip paint. The men were respectful, tipping their hats when they saw her and thanking her for the food without making crude comments or grabby gestures. It was such a stark contrast to what she was used to that it took her days to stop flinching when one of them approached her. Isaac worked with the cattle, spending long days in the saddle mending fences, moving herds and breaking in green horses. But every evening, he would appear on the back porch of the ranch house, cleaned up as much as ranch work allowed, and ask if she wanted to take a walk. Sometimes she said yes, and they would stroll around the ranch yard as the sun set, talking about their days or just enjoying the companionable silence. Sometimes she said no, and he would just nod and wish her a good night without any trace of resentment. It was the lack of expectation, of demand, that slowly began to thaw something frozen inside her. Isaac never pushed, never asked for more than she was willing to give. He told her about the places he had been, and the things he had seen, painting pictures with his words of mountains and rivers and towns strung like beads along the railroad lines. She found herself looking forward to those evening walks, to the sound of his voice and the easy comfort of his presence. One evening about 3 weeks after their arrival, they were walking along the creek that ran through the ranch property when Zelda finally worked up the courage to ask him something that had been on her mind. "Why are you being so patient with me?" she asked. "Most men would have expected something by now, some kind of payment for rescuing me." Isaac stopped walking and turned to face her, his expression serious in the fading light. "Because you are not a transaction, Zelda. You are a person, and you deserve to be treated like one. I am not being patient because I expect some kind of reward down the line. I am being patient because it is the right thing to do. Even if I never want more than friendship," she pressed, needing to know. "Even then," he said firmly, "I would be lying if I said I did not hope for more someday. I think you are an incredible woman, and I am drawn to you in ways I have not experienced before. But if friendship is all you ever want to give me, then I will count myself lucky to have that. Your feelings matter, Zelda. What you want matters." She felt tears prick her eyes for the second time since meeting him, and this time she did not fight them. They spilled over and ran down her cheeks, and Isaac pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and offered it to her without trying to pull her into an embrace or make a big fuss. "I do not know if I can ever be what you want," she said, her voice breaking. "Those men, they took so much from me. I do not know if I have anything left to give." "They did not take who you are," Isaac said gently. "They hurt you, and that is unforgivable. But you are still here, still fighting, still standing. That takes a strength most people never have to find. And as for having nothing left to give, I think you are wrong about that. I see you with Marcus, how patient you are when he grumbles about his arthritis. I see you sneaking extra biscuits to the younger ranch hands because you know they are still growing. I see you every day, Zelda, and I see someone with so much to give if she could just believe in herself. You make me want to believe," she whispered. "Then that is a start," he said, smiling. The first winter snow came in late November, dusting the prairie in white and turning the ranch into a scene from a picture book. Zelda stood on the porch wrapped in a heavy shawl, watching the fat flakes drift down from a sky the color of pewter. She had been at the Triple Bar for 6 weeks, and in that time, she had gained weight from regular meals, lost the dark circles under her eyes from adequate sleep, and begun to remember what it felt like to laugh without bitterness. Marcus had taken to treating her like a favorite niece, gruff but protective, and the ranch hands had accepted her as part of the crew. She no longer flinched when men approached her, no longer calculated escape routes every time she entered a room. The constant state of alert that had been her reality for so long had begun to ease, replaced by something that almost felt like peace. Isaac had been away for the past 3 days, helping move a herd to winter pasture, and Zelda was surprised by how much she missed him. She had grown accustomed to their evening walks, to the sound of his voice and the steadiness of his presence. She found herself watching the horizon, looking for the familiar sight of his bay gelding. When he finally rode in late that afternoon, covered in snow and grinning despite the cold, something shifted in her chest. He swung down from his horse and walked toward the porch, and she found herself moving to meet him, down the steps and into the yard where the snow was already accumulating. "Missed me?" he asked, his eyes warm despite the teasing tone. "Maybe," she admitted, and was rewarded by his smile widening. "Good," he said, "because I definitely missed you. Nearly froze my backside off the past few nights, and all I could think about was how you make the best coffee in the territory." "Just my coffee?" she asked, surprising herself with the flirtation. "Well," Isaac said slowly, "your biscuits are pretty spectacular too." She laughed, the sound bright and genuine, and impulsively reached out to brush snow off his shoulder. It was the first time she had initiated physical contact, and they both seemed to realize it at the same moment. Her hand stilled, resting against the heavy canvas of his coat, and their eyes met. "Zelda," he said softly, a question in his voice. "I think," she said carefully, "that I might be ready for more than friendship, if you are still interested." "If I am still interested," he repeated, his voice rough with emotion. "Zelda, I have been interested since the moment you looked at me in that saloon with blood on your face and fire in your eyes. I have been interested through every conversation and every walk and every minute of every day. But I need you to be sure. I need you to know that this is what you want, not what you think I want." "I am sure," she said, and realized as she spoke the words that they were true. "I am sure that I want to see where this goes. I am sure that you make me feel safe in a way I have never experienced. I am sure that when you were gone, I counted the hours until you came back. I cannot promise you that I will not have bad days or that I will not be scared sometimes. But I can promise you that I want to try." Isaac raised his hand slowly, giving her time to move away if she wanted to, and gently cupped her cheek. His palm was warm despite the cold, slightly rough from ranch work, and Zelda found herself leaning into the touch instead of away from it. "Then we will try," he said. "Together." He kissed her then, soft and sweet and careful, a kiss that tasted of snowflakes and promise. It was nothing like the brutal, demanding kisses she had endured from other men. This was gentle, respectful, a question rather than a demand. When they finally pulled apart, both of them were smiling. "Well," Marcus's voice boomed from the porch, making them both jump. "About time you two figured that out. I was starting to think I would have to lock you in the barn together." Zelda felt her cheeks heat with embarrassment, but Isaac just laughed and kept his arm around her shoulders as they walked back toward the house. The months that followed were not without challenges. There were days when Zelda woke from nightmares, her heart racing and her body drenched in sweat, certain for a moment that she was back in that saloon room. On those days, Isaac would sit with her in the pre-dawn darkness, holding her hand and talking softly until the terror faded. He never demanded explanations or showed frustration with her fears. He just stayed, solid and steady, until she could breathe again. There were also moments of unexpected joy. Isaac taught her to ride properly, not just clinging to a horse's mane but actually controlling the animal, and she discovered a love of speed and freedom that made her laugh like a child. She taught him to appreciate the small beauties she had learned to notice during her years of survival, pointing out the way light fell across the prairie grass or the particular shade of blue The sky turned just before sunset. They courted properly, or as properly as ranch life allowed. Isaac would bring her wildflowers he found on the range, slightly wilted but offered with such sincerity that they might as well have been roses. She would save him extra pieces of pie, his favorite dessert, and leave them wrapped in cloth on the porch railing where he would find them after late work. They held hands and stole kisses, and talked about their dreams for the future with increasing confidence that there might actually be a future to plan for. In early March, word reached the ranch that Garrett had died in a saloon brawl in Tulsa, stabbed during an argument over a card game. Marcus delivered the news to Zelda while she was kneading bread dough, watching her face carefully for her reaction. "Good," she said simply, and continued kneading. Then she stopped, her hands stilling in the dough, and looked up at Marcus with wide eyes. "Does that make me a terrible person?" "Being glad he is dead makes you human," Marcus said gruffly. "Some men do enough evil in this world that nobody mourns their passing. You are entitled to your feelings, girl. Do not let anyone tell you different." That evening she told Isaac the news while they sat on the porch watching the stars emerge. "I thought I would feel different," she said, "like a weight lifted or something. But mostly I just feel relieved. He cannot come after me now. He cannot hurt anyone else." "That is enough," Isaac said, pulling her closer. "You do not have to feel any particular way about it. Your reaction is yours, and it is valid whatever it is." In April, Isaac asked Marcus for permission to build a small cabin on the ranch property. "I am thinking about staying on permanent," he explained. "If that works for you, and if it does, I would like to have my own place. A home." Marcus had agreed immediately, offering materials and help from the other ranch hands. The cabin went up quickly, a simple structure with 2 rooms, a stone fireplace, and a porch that faced east to catch the morning sun. Isaac worked on it every spare moment, sanding the rough edges and fitting the windows with care. One evening in late May, as they stood looking at the nearly completed cabin, Isaac turned to Zelda with a nervous expression she had never seen on his face before. "I built this for us," he said. "If you want it to be for us, I am asking you to marry me, Zelda. I am asking you to share this life with me, to build a future together. I know I am not rich and ranch work is hard, but I promise you that I will spend every day trying to make you happy. I promise you safety and respect and love for as long as I am breathing. What do you say?" Zelda looked at the cabin, at this physical manifestation of hope and commitment, and then at Isaac's face with its anxious hope. 6 months ago, she had been a woman without prospects, without hope, convinced she was beyond saving. Now she stood on the threshold of a real life, offered by a man who had kept every promise he had ever made to her. "Yes," she said, the word coming easily. "Yes, I will marry you. I will share this life with you and build a future and figure out this happiness thing together." Isaac's whoop of joy scared several nearby chickens into flight, and then he was lifting her off her feet and spinning her around while she laughed and held on tight. When he set her down, he kissed her with a passion they had been carefully building toward, and for the first time in her life, Zelda felt truly desired in a way that had nothing to do with transaction and everything to do with genuine feeling. They were married in June on the porch of their new cabin by a traveling preacher who came through twice a year to tend to the spiritual needs of the scattered ranch families. Zelda wore a simple blue dress that she had sewn herself, and Isaac wore his best shirt, washed and pressed until it was nearly stiff. Marcus stood up with Isaac, and the preacher's wife stood with Zelda, and the whole thing took less than 15 minutes. But those 15 minutes changed everything. When the preacher pronounced them husband and wife, Zelda felt a shift inside her, a sense of belonging that she had been searching for her entire life. She was Zelda Anderson now, wife of Isaac Anderson, and nobody could take that away from her. The wedding celebration was simple but joyful. Marcus had arranged for a pig to be roasted, and one of the ranch hands played fiddle while another had a harmonica. They danced in the ranch yard as the sun set, Zelda's hand in Isaac's, moving to music that seemed to come from the land itself. The other ranch hands and their families joined in, and for one perfect evening, there was nothing but music and laughter and the promise of tomorrow. That night, in their cabin, Isaac was careful and patient, making sure Zelda felt safe and desired and cherished. He had waited months for this, and he took his time, checking in with her constantly, making sure she was comfortable. For Zelda, it was a revelation. This was what intimacy was supposed to be, a sharing between equals, an expression of genuine feeling rather than a transaction or an act of dominance. She cried afterward, but they were good tears, healing tears, and Isaac held her and whispered words of love and commitment until she fell asleep in his arms. The years that followed were marked by hard work and steady contentment. Zelda thrived as Isaac's wife, finding joy in creating a home and belonging to a community. The cabin gradually filled with small touches that made it theirs. Curtains she sewed from fabric Marcus gave her, a rocking chair Isaac carved during the long winter evenings, a garden that produced vegetables and herbs for cooking and medicine. She discovered that she had a talent for healing, picked up during her years of survival when medical care was a luxury she could not afford. When one of the ranch hands broke his arm in a fall, Zelda set it with a competence that surprised everyone, including herself. Word spread, and soon people from neighboring ranches were showing up at her door with various ailments and injuries. She never charged much, just enough to buy supplies, and developed a reputation as a skilled healer with a gentle touch. Isaac continued working with the cattle, eventually becoming Marcus's foreman when the old man's arthritis made it difficult for him to ride all day. They saved their money carefully, planning for a future that seemed more secure with each passing month. In the evenings, they would sit on their porch and talk about their dreams, and increasingly, those dreams included children. In the spring of 1894, Zelda discovered she was pregnant. The news filled her with equal parts joy and terror. She had seen too many women die in childbirth, too many babies born into circumstances that doomed them from the start. But Isaac was ecstatic, his happiness infectious, and Marcus declared himself ready to be a surrogate grandfather. "This baby will be loved," Isaac promised her, his hand resting on her still flat belly. "This baby will be wanted and protected and raised to know its own worth. Everything we did not have, we will give this child." The pregnancy was not easy. Zelda suffered through months of nausea and exhaustion, and there were moments when fear threatened to overwhelm her. But Isaac was there through all of it, bringing her crackers when she was sick, rubbing her aching back, reading to her from the books Marcus lent them when she was too tired to do anything but lie in bed. In December of 1894, during a snowstorm that had everyone snowed in for 3 days, Zelda went into labor. The nearest doctor was 20 miles away and unreachable in the storm, so it was Marcus and Isaac who helped her through it, along with the preacher's wife who lived on a neighboring ranch and had experience with births. It was long and difficult, hours of pain that had Zelda certain she was going to die. But Isaac never left her side, holding her hand and whispering encouragement even when she cursed at him, and told him she hated him for getting her into this situation. When the baby finally arrived, slippery and screaming, Isaac was the one who cut the cord with shaking hands. "A boy," the preacher's wife announced, wrapping the baby in a clean blanket. "A healthy baby boy." They named him James after Isaac's father, and he had his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. Holding him for the first time, Zelda felt a fierce protective love unlike anything she had ever experienced. This tiny person made from love and hope represented everything she had fought for. "Hello, James Anderson," she whispered to the baby. "You are so loved already. You have no idea how much." Isaac sat beside them on the bed, his arm around Zelda's shoulders, looking at his wife and son with an expression of such complete contentment that Zelda felt her throat tighten with emotion. "We did it," Isaac said softly. "We made it here. From that saloon to this moment. I am so proud of you." "We made it," Zelda corrected. "Together." The next years were busy with the chaos and joy of raising a child. James was a happy baby who grew into a curious toddler, constantly getting into things and exploring his world with fearless enthusiasm. Zelda found that motherhood suited her in ways she had never expected. She was patient with James's endless questions, creative in finding ways to teach him about the world, and fiercely protective of his innocence. Isaac was a devoted father, carving wooden toys for his son and teaching him about horses and cattle as soon as the boy was old enough to walk. On summer evenings, the three of them would sit on the porch, and Isaac would tell stories about the places he had been and the things he had seen, painting pictures of a world James would grow up to explore. In 1897, Zelda gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Martha after Isaac's mother. She had Isaac's gray eyes and Zelda's smile, and from the moment she arrived, she had her father completely wrapped around her tiny finger. James, now 3 years old, was fascinated by his baby sister and appointed himself her protector. Marcus, now in his 70s, officially retired and turned the running of the ranch over to Isaac, though he still liked to be consulted on major decisions. He spent most of his time on the porch of the main house, smoking his pipe and watching the grandchildren he had never had by blood but claimed by choice. "You two are a success story," he told Isaac and Zelda one evening when they brought the children for dinner. "Against all odds, you built something real and lasting. That takes courage." "We had help," Zelda said, smiling at the old man. "We had someone who gave us a chance when we needed it most." "Well," Marcus said gruffly, uncomfortable with sentiment, "you both earned it. Now go on, get those kids home before they fall asleep in their plates." Life settled into a rhythm that felt both familiar and miraculous. Isaac managed the ranch with fairness and competence, earning the respect of the hands who worked for him. Zelda continued her healing work while raising their children and managing their household. They were not wealthy, but they were comfortable, and more importantly, they were happy. There were challenges, of course. Harsh winters when the cattle struggled and money was tight. A drought one summer that had everyone worried about water. James breaking his leg falling from a tree, and Martha coming down with a fever that had them terrified for 3 days until it broke. But they faced each challenge together, drawing strength from each other and the life they had built. In 1899, a woman showed up at their door late one evening, her face bruised and her eyes desperate. She had heard about Zelda from someone in town, heard that she had once been in a bad situation and gotten out. She wanted to know if there was hope for her too. Zelda looked at Isaac, who nodded without hesitation, and they took the woman in. Her name was Margaret, and she stayed with them for 2 months while they helped her figure out her next steps. Zelda talked to her about choices and worth and the long road to healing. Isaac helped her secure work at her ranch 20 miles north, run by a widow who needed help. It was not the last time someone showed up at their door. Over the years, word spread that the Andersons would help women who needed it, and Zelda found herself becoming an unofficial way station for those escaping bad situations. She helped them find work, gave them supplies, and most importantly, showed them by example that there was life after trauma. "You are doing important work," Isaac told her after they had helped a young girl escape from a situation similar to what Zelda had endured. "You are giving them what someone gave you, a chance." "We are giving them what you gave me," Zelda corrected. "Hope." In 1902, they added a room onto their cabin to accommodate their growing family. Zelda was pregnant again, and this time it was twin boys who arrived in a rush during a spring thunderstorm, one right after the other. They named them Thomas and William, and James and Martha were delighted with their new brothers. The cabin that had once seemed spacious now rang with the noise and chaos of 4 children, but Zelda would not have changed it for anything. Every morning, she woke up in the arms of a man who loved her, surrounded by children who were being raised with the security and affection she had never known. It was more than she had ever dared to dream. Marcus passed away in his sleep in the winter of 1903, and they buried him on a hill overlooking the ranch he had built. At the funeral, Isaac gave a eulogy that spoke of a man who had been fair, honest, and willing to give people chances when others would not. Zelda placed wildflowers on his grave and whispered a thank you to the old man who had been the first to see her as more than her past. In his will, Marcus left the ranch to Isaac and Zelda, along with a letter that Isaac read aloud to his wife with tears streaming down his face. "You remind me," Marcus had written in his scratchy handwriting, "that people are more than their worst moments. You remind me that everyone deserves dignity and a chance to start over. You both took the chances you were given and built something beautiful. Take care of this place, raise your children to be kind, and never forget how far you have come." They framed the letter and hung it in their cabin, a reminder of where they had been and what they had overcome. The Triple Bar Ranch thrived under Isaac's management, gaining a reputation as a place that treated its workers fairly, and where the owner and his wife actually cared about the people who worked for them. The years continued to pass, marked by small triumphs and occasional setbacks. James grew into a serious boy with his father's steadiness and his mother's compassion. Martha was bright and curious, constantly asking questions about everything. Thomas and William were identical in appearance but opposites in temperament, one quiet and thoughtful, the other boisterous and adventurous. Zelda watched her children grow and felt a contentment she had never imagined possible. She had been used by many men before Isaac, had been broken down and told she was worthless so many times she had almost believed it. But Isaac had seen something different, had offered her not just rescue but genuine partnership and love. On their 10th wedding anniversary in 1903, Isaac gave her a gift he had been working on for months, a painting he had commissioned from an artist in Oklahoma City. It showed their cabin with the 5 of them on the porch, capturing a moment of domestic happiness that would have seemed like an impossible fantasy 10 years before. "I want you to remember," Isaac said as she stared at the painting with tears in her eyes, "that this is what you deserve. That this is what we built together. You are not the woman from that saloon anymore. You are my wife, the mother of my children, a healer, and a person who helps others find their own strength. I am so grateful that I walked into that saloon on that night. Meeting you was the best thing that ever happened to me." "You saved me," Zelda said, turning to him. "No," Isaac said, pulling her close. "You saved yourself. I just gave you the chance to do it." In 1905, they added another child to their family, not through birth but through circumstance. A ranch hand's daughter was orphaned when both her parents died in an influenza outbreak, and Zelda and Isaac took her in without hesitation. Her name was Emily, and she was 8 years old, scared and grieving. Zelda understood that fear, that sense of the ground shifting beneath your feet, and she poured all her love and experience into helping the girl heal. It took time, but slowly Emily began to smile again, to play with the other children, to call Zelda Mama and Isaac Papa without the catch in her voice. Watching her bloom was its own kind of healing for Zelda, a reminder that love could transform even the deepest wounds. By 1907, the cabin had been expanded twice more and now sprawled across the small hill where Isaac had first built it. James was approaching his teenage years, tall and responsible, already helping his father with ranch management. Martha was learning healing from her mother, showing the same gentle touch and intuitive understanding. The twins were 10 and into everything, and Emily had become so much a part of the family that it was easy to forget she had not been born into it. One evening that summer, Zelda and Isaac sat on their porch watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and gold. The children were playing in the yard, their laughter carrying on the warm breeze, and Zelda leaned against her husband's shoulder with a sigh of contentment. "Do you ever think about that night?" she asked. "In the saloon in Guthrie?" "Sometimes," Isaac admitted. "I think about how close we both came to missing this. If I had ridden into a different town, if you had not been at that bar, if I had not had the courage to speak to you." "I think about what you said," Zelda said softly. "That you would cherish me. I did not believe you at first. I could not imagine what that would even look like. And now—" She gestured to the scene before them, their children playing, the ranch thriving, the life they had built from nothing but hope and determination. "Now I know exactly what it looks like. You kept your promise, Isaac. Every single day for 15 years you have cherished me." "It has been easy," Isaac said, kissing the top of her head. "You make it easy to keep that promise." As the sun set over the Oklahoma prairie, painting their world in gold, Zelda Zimmerman Anderson reflected on the journey that had brought her here. She had been broken, used, told she was worthless and beyond saving. But one man had looked past her circumstances and seen her worth, and together they had built something neither could have achieved alone. She had been used by many men before Isaac Anderson. That was true. But he had been the one who cherished her, and in doing so had helped her learn to cherish herself. Their love had not been a rescue or a savior story. It had been a partnership, two wounded people choosing to heal together and build something lasting. Their children would grow up knowing they were loved and valued. The women who came to their door seeking help would find it. The ranch would continue to be a place of fairness and dignity. And every night, Zelda would fall asleep in the arms of the man who had promised to cherish her and had spent every day since making good on that promise. It was more than a happy ending. It was a whole new beginning, built on the foundation of respect, patience, and genuine love. And as Zelda watched her family in the fading light, she knew that all of this, was exactly what she deserved. Not because Isaac had saved her, but because she had been brave enough to save herself and wise enough to accept the hand he offered. The future stretched out before them, full of promise and possibility, and Zelda Anderson walked into it with her head held high and her heart full, no longer defined by her past, but shaped by the love and life she had fought so hard to claim. She was cherished, she was loved, and she was finally, truly home.